Well, we've had a bit of fun with Roy's tax tips, but time to get serious again because Paul Guerra is the Chief Executive Officer of the Victorian Chamber of Commerce, and he's been good enough to join us today on RJ Sanderson TV. Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Great to be here.
Paul, you're the voice of businesses, and at the moment, many businesses at a standstill in Victoria. We've had the federal budget last week. What did you make of the federal budget and I suppose the measures in there that will benefit Victorian businesses?
Yeah, we're very happy with the federal budget, but of course, to take full advantage of it, you need to be up and operating, and that's where we're working closely with the state government now to get businesses back to business. But on the face of it, it's all about jobs. There's a lot of money being spent. It's a great reward for local businesses for their grit and determination. It's a really strong reward for the ambitious entrepreneurs who have stayed the course. And like everyone in Victoria, we're just ready to get on with it now.
Paul, it's interesting, the federal budget affects all of Australia, but Victoria's been hit hardest with COVID and extended lockdown above and beyond everybody else. Were you hoping for something in the federal budget specifically to help Victoria?
Oh, look, there's no denying we would have liked to have seen JobKeeper extended. It's probably not a budget conversation. It's more of an additional measure for Victoria. It wasn't to be, so the gauntlet's laid down to the state government. Help us move beyond this stage of restrictions, and then let's get going. Because we know as soon as business in this state is able to get going, we'll then be able to take advantage of what was put in the federal budget.
Speaking of the state government, Paul, the budget not too far away. What are you hoping to see from a budget perspective from the Victorian state budget?
Yeah, we want it to be business-led again. We're concerned about the growing cost or debt bubble, as we call it, that's looming over a number of businesses here. So a way of easing that to ensure that business can come out the other side of this. So that's all around red tape, lowering business costs, of course putting investment in front of business as well. We think the need to rebuild Victoria will be there, and that should be addressed. We came into COVID as the engine room of Australia's economy. We're last to come out of it. So we're going to need some stimulus to enable us to catch up, and we hope we can catch up quickly.
Paul, Vicky were very active in putting proposals to the federal government. Was there anything specifically that's been left out that you thought, I would have liked this to be announced? Is there some policy that they've forgotten that you think should come forward in the future?
Yeah, you're right. We were active. And look, we looked for three major themes coming out of the federal budget, and we advocated strongly for those. The first was around protecting and growing local business. And we think that's largely been ticked. Cementing and improving our global reputation. When you look at the money that's been put in there for tourism and to a lesser extent manufacturing, because I think we can grow further with our global reputation there, we think that's been ticked. And finally, for the next big infrastructure build, and there was an amount of money put in there for Victoria in terms of the infrastructure build as well. So we think for the three areas that we advocated on, they were certainly picked up. We were one of the first and probably the strongest in terms of what's now become known as a loss carryback. We're really happy to see that included in there because it's a cash injection that can go to business at a time that they need it most. We'd like to see that extended. It's only for incorporated companies at the moment. We think that should be extended to partnerships and other business setups. And we also would like to see, whilst you can claim it against past profits, we'd actually like to see that as a cash injection against future profits. So the loss that you made in the last financial year, the COVID year, whether that can be materialised into a cash grant to put cash in hands of businesses that actually may not have made a profit over the past couple of years either.
Paul, we've heard from the Chamber talking about businesses that have been adversely affected, but there have been businesses that have thrived during COVID. What are the learnings that you guys are passing on to those struggling businesses from the businesses that have adapted and are now thriving during this COVID environment?
Yes, it's often the forgotten success that's there. And look, those businesses that have been able to move to digital and online quickly and find a quick path, a safe path to the consumer have done really well. And you're seeing that with some of the retailers there. The other businesses that have done well are those that have been able to move their production facilities from what they were manufacturing pre-COVID to what they are manufacturing. And you think respirators and even some of the distilleries that have moved into hand sanitizer as well, through to clothing manufacturers that have moved into masks. So what that shows me is that with the right strategy and with the right approach and understanding where the economy may go, how do you move your organisation and how do you move it quickly? So I think there's an amount of work to be done for every business as we come out of this. We had 28 years of growth in this country, and this will be the first time in 28 years we're not going to see the growth. So in some cases, we've been lucky. We are the lucky country. But in other cases, we probably haven't been worrying about that rainy day. That rainy day's come. And I think it will teach us a lesson in terms of, as we become more optimistic about the future, let's make sure that we're also planning for that rainy day as well. So what can the business become in the event that it needs to be?
Just on that point, Paul, you talk about businesses needing that strategy. What about the businesses that are struggling at the moment that are perhaps unproductive moving forward? How do you talk to those businesses and say, look, maybe you just need to move on into a different industry? Because the reality is, I think that as we approach a new normal, there will be industries that are redundant, and there's nothing that the government can do, even by lifting restrictions.
There's some really tough conversations coming up. My past month particularly, there probably hasn't been a day gone by where I haven't had a conversation with a business owner that's at their wit's end. They've exhausted their financial means. There's no chance of earning income until the restrictions are left. What do they do? And I've got to say, the state government here, when I went to them with those stories, were fabulous in terms of standing up a business mentoring program. Because as I said to both the Treasurer and Minister Pakula, when you're in a stress environment, you cannot possibly make the best decision for either you or for your business. And so what they funded, to the tune of $10 million, was a business mentoring program to provide that relief valve to businesses and business owners that can make that decision with a guiding hand. And I think for some of them, unfortunately, the truth is some will close, but not all should, because there's opportunities with the right input to rethink what they're doing, perhaps go digital. And we've heard from the Prime Minister that, we're not digital enough yet to the full extent. Most have websites, but a lot can't transact. So let's get to that point. And then I think we'll start to see, and we've seen a lot through this phase around collaboration. I think as business owners understand the power of collaboration, I think that will help some businesses that might have otherwise closed rise up again as well. And that could be in their own right. It could be through mergers. It could be through buyouts as well. So there's lessons to be learnt. And I think that the big message here is, don't try and do it yourself. If you're in trouble, ask for help. I've never seen a time in my business career where anybody, competitors, partners, are willing to offer advice and to actually get in and help.
Paul, it's interesting that I think we are a large accounting firm, and we've seen many sole traders almost fall through the cracks with a lot of the budget, state government grants that were announced. Interestingly, you just mentioned the mentor program, which has just been rolled out recently and been managed by Vicky. Have you had much take up on that so far? I know it's fairly new.
It's been incredible. Without much advertising, we've had just under 1,400 businesses register their interest to participate. 1,400 businesses in Victoria alone. And these are businesses between 0 employees and 20 employees. Right? So they're at that small to medium end of it. We've had just over 300 or so mentors that have signed up to actually offer support through that as well. And we're starting to get feedback from those sessions that have been completed. The beauty of the program is, if I want to be mentored, so I own a company and I'm looking for help, through the Becky website, everybody's registered. We will then provide that company with at least 2 mentors that they can choose from. They choose the most appropriate one, and then they're off for their 4 sessions. And we're starting to get really good feedback in terms of what that's meant for the business that might have been in trouble, that is now able to operate successfully now.
Paul, some interesting insights. Thanks so much for joining us on RJ Sanderson TV.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, and keep up the great work.